I now give the floor to the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, it is regrettable for the United Nations, for humanity, and for the cause of justice that an individual who is wanted by the International Criminal Court has been granted the opportunity to address this esteemed body. An individual who bases in the blood of innocent children must not be granted the opportunity to address the United Nations, an organization whose foremost purpose is to uphold international peace and security. This is a disgrace to peace, justice, humanity, and morality. It is preposterous that a regime that persistently violates each and every principle of this organization is allowed to lecture this body instead of being expelled per Article 6 of the Charter of the United Nations. Why should we extend our attention to the address of the representative of the regime whose conduct is diametrically opposed to everything this organization stands for? The Israeli regime is inherently founded on aggression, occupation, oppression, apartheid, and terror. From its very inception up until the present day, this warmongering and expansionist regime has waged tens of wars, invaded not only all countries around it without exception, but also other countries in the region. In the past 2 years alone, it has invaded Gaza and the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, and Qatar. Yet even this is not enough for this occupying regime, as evidenced by the recent declaration by its criminal prime minister of their illusion to create Greater Israel, a plan that necessitates invading at least 4 more countries. Given this vast, dark resume, is there any question who is the true principal enemy of peace and the main source of insecurity and instability in West Asia? One must also seriously ask, isn't their conduct real threats to and material breaches of the peace? Last year, my delegation warned that if unchecked, the Israeli regime would commit further aggressions. Unfortunately, this was not heard. We warn again that if unchecked, the Zionist regime will spare no efforts to drag the entire region into a full-scale war. Accordingly, this regime must be compelled to stop immediately and permanently all its attacks on Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and other parts of the region. This organization has the responsibility to act and must act promptly and decisively. Inaction would only embolden this regime to commit more crimes more brutally. In the past 24 months, this apartheid regime, which is the manifestation of a racist ideology, has killed over 65,000 innocent Palestinian civilians and wounded nearly 118,000 others in Gaza. It continues to brutally use the starvation of civilians as a method of war and resorts to forced displacement of Palestinians in implementing its genocidal projects, particularly in Gaza. Additionally, Palestinian civilians in the West Bank are also subject to daily violence and crimes by the Israeli regime. The Zionists consider themselves a selected ethnicity and consider the indigenous Palestinians as human animals who must be eradicated entirely. To cover up its atrocities and to erase the history of its genocide, this regime makes every effort to silence all voices. That's why during the past 2 years it has killed nearly 250 journalists, which is more than the combined number of journalists killed in the U.S. Civil War, World War I and II, and the wars in Korea, Vietnam, Yugoslavia, and Afghanistan. Isn't it a direct assault on freedom of the press? Further efforts must also be made by this organization and its member states to prevent terrorist activities conducted by the Israeli regime, the latest of which are assassinations conducted in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, and Qatar. Mr. President, one example of the Israeli regime aggression is its 12-day aggression against my country in June 2025, which, among others, resulted in killing over 100 Iranian scientists, high-ranking civil and military officials, and other civilians, including more than 170 women and children. Look at this picture. These are just a few images of Iranian children. Children who, like others around the world, should be in classrooms or playing in the kindergartens right now. But their lives were brutally taken by this child-killing regime during the 12-day war imposed on my country. This aggression and the heinous acts by this illegitimate regime against my fellow citizens and my country were material breaches of the basic principles of international law, in particular the prohibition of the use of force, a peremptory norm of international law enshrined in this organization's charter. Israel's aggression against Iran is conducted based on a series of fabrications against the exclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. For well over 30 years, the Israeli officials, including its current criminal prime minister, have warned of an imminent threat from an Iranian nuclear weapon. Despite all this hue and cry, to date, there has been no report from the sole competent international body responsible for verifying the nuclear activities of states, namely the International Atomic Energy Agency, indicating the diversion by Iran of even 1 gram of nuclear material for making nuclear weapon. Moreover, such fabrication was not endorsed by the United States even during the Israel's aggression against Iran. At the same time, one must not forget that, in fact, the clandestine nuclear weapons program of the Israeli regime and its nuclear weapon arsenals constitutes the real source of a serious threat to peace and security in the region and beyond. Today, once again, the Israeli regime made a series of old and new accusations against my country. They are all totally rejected, and I don't want to even dignify them with an answer. This is an unsuccessful attempt to distract attentions away from crimes committed by this regime. It has not only committed all 4 core international crimes, namely the crimes of aggression, genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, but also committed them all systematically, simultaneously, and in the most brutal manner. In fact, like brutality, deception, disinformation, and duplicity are also in the DNA of the Israeli regime and constitute an inherent part of its weapon of mass deception. In fact, however, with all crimes committed by this regime during the past 2 years, no amount of deception and disinformation campaign can cover up its unlawful and inhuman conducts. Finally, the Islamic Republic of Iran fully supports the inherent right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and to resist aggression and occupation using all available means, as well as the inherent right to self-defense of all regional countries against the Israeli regime's aggression. I must also stress that the Islamic Republic of Iran did not and will not hesitate to vigorously defend its territory, people, and vital interests against any aggression. I thank you, Mr. President.
Doy ahora la palabra a la representante.
I now give the floor to the representative of India.